Europe will disappear in 20 years. It might even disappear. These aren't my words. They're written in black and white in an official White House document signed by Donald Trump in November 2025. The United States National Security Strategy. Europe will be unrecognizable in 20 years. And this isn't just political rhetoric. Because along with this statement came a very concrete deadline, 2027. In less than 2 years, the United States could abandon Europe to its fate. But what's really happening? Why, after 76 years of alliance, does America want to cut ties with Europe? And most importantly, can Europe actually disappear? Let's start with the facts. The National Security Strategy is the most important document in American foreign policy. It's published every administration and defines the United States' strategic priorities for the coming years. Trump's version, released in November 2025, is brutal toward Europe. Direct quote, "The continent will be unrecognizable in 20 years or less if current trends continue." The document talks about 3 crises that are destroying Europe. First, military dependence on the United States. Europe cannot defend itself. Second, immigration and demographic changes, which, according to the White House, are destabilizing European societies. Third, economic weakness compared to China and the United States. But the real bombshell came a few days later. Reuters revealed that the Pentagon has set a deadline. By 2027, most NATO defense capabilities in Europe must be transferred to European countries. The United States is pulling out. Okay, but why does Trump want to abandon Europe right now? The answer is simple: China. The United States has realized that the real challenge of the 21st century is no longer in Europe, but in the Pacific. China is expanding its military and economic influence at an impressive speed. Taiwan, the South China Sea, alliances with Russia and Iran. For Washington, keeping 100,000 troops in Europe is a luxury it can no longer afford. Those troops are needed elsewhere. And then there's the money issue. For decades, America has complained that European allies don't pay enough for their own defense. In 2014, NATO established that each country should spend at least 2% of GDP on defense. Today, out of 32 NATO countries, only 23 meet this threshold. Italy spends 1.5%, Germany 1.6%, Spain 1.3%. Translation: Europe has gotten used to being protected for free by the United States while building its welfare state. But there's another factor nobody talks about openly. Europe is in demographic decline. The population is aging rapidly. Fewer young people means fewer soldiers, less economic growth, less dynamism. From the American perspective, investing resources in a declining continent no longer makes strategic sense. But what does this 2027 deadline actually mean? According to Pentagon sources, by that date, the United States wants to transfer to Europe operational command of NATO, management of key military bases, air and missile defense systems, and logistics and supply chains. In practice, Europe will need to be able to handle a conventional war against Russia without American help. And here's the problem. Europe isn't ready. It doesn't have enough ammunition. It doesn't have enough tanks. It doesn't have a unified command system. And most importantly, it doesn't have the political will to spend the necessary money. Some analysts talk about 500 billion euros needed over the next 5 years just to close the gap with Russia. Money that no European government wants to spend. But here's where things get interesting. Because while Trump is threatening to abandon Europe, he's signing billion-dollar contracts with the European defense industry. Last week, $14 billion in orders for German, Italian, and French companies. Missile systems, drones, radar technology. Contradiction? Or strategy? The truth is that Trump doesn't really want to abandon Europe. He wants to force it to pay more. It's a negotiating tactic he already used during his first term. He waves the specter of withdrawal, scares the allies, and then signs advantageous contracts for American companies when European governments, terrified, open their wallets. But this time, there's a difference. This time, the threat seems more credible. Because it's not just Trump thinking this way. It's an entire American leadership class, Democrats included, that sees Europe as a burden rather than an ally. So will Europe really disappear in 20 years? Probably not. But it will certainly be very different from what we know today. Europe wakes up, drastically increases military spending, and becomes an autonomous geopolitical actor. Difficult, but not impossible. Europe remains divided, dependent, and gradually becomes irrelevant on the world stage. The United States focuses on China. Russia regains influence in the Balkans and Eastern Europe. Something completely new. Perhaps a closer alliance between France, Germany, Poland, and the Nordic countries. A European hardcore that leaves weaker countries behind. What's certain is that 2027 will be a decisive year. Either Europe decides to grow up and become an adult, or it accepts being treated as a problem to manage instead of a strategic partner. And what about Italy? We're in the middle. Too small to count alone, too important to be ignored. The question is, which side will we be on when it's time to choose? If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And write in the comments, do you think Europe still has a future as a global power? See you in the next video.